Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the SAIEE webinar in collaboration with the Engineering Council of South Africa on the road to registration, understanding and navigating the ECSA registration process. Before we start, a few webinar considerations. Attendees are reminded to ensure the volume is turned up on their device. Ensure you have a stable internet connection. This will ensure that streaming and audio will run smoothly. Attendees can ask questions via the questions panel located within the GoToWebinar control panel. And by default, the control panel is located on the right-hand side of your screen. The chat function is reserved for webinar organizers and panelists to communicate with attendees. Attendees will not be able to chat with each other, however, are encouraged to ask questions. A recording of this webinar will be made available on the SAIEE YouTube channel, SAIEE TV. The registration link to this channel is in the chat box. Please register, it's free. The recording of this webinar will be listed under the SAIEE Training Academy playlist. The certificate of attendance will be issued a few days after this webinar. Please also look out for the handouts in the chat box, in the handout section, my apologies, for the May issue of the What Now magazine, as well as a Training Academy brochure for you to download. I'm going to get right to it, introduce you to our speaker today, Mr. Kenneth Masiagwala, who is a member of ECSA and registered with ECSA as a professional technologist and a member of peer review at the Engineering Council of South Africa. Additionally, Kenneth serves as a tribunal member at ECSA as and when he is required for an appeals matter. He has volunteered at ECSA for over 6 years, assisting ECSA with applications assessments, moderation, and conducting reviews. Kenneth is also part of the research team at ECSA as and when required for paper reviews, and he played an integral part in the paper themed Identify Reasons for the Decline in the Renewals Rate of Registered Persons, and is currently working on training and mentoring guide for professional categories at ECSA. I'd like to now hand you over to Kenneth. Over to you, Kenneth. Good to go, Kenneth.
Yeah, thank you, Means. Let me just go to the beginning of my presentation. I'm just also gonna take down a couple of things. Good afternoon, everyone who's on the hybrid. Thank you, Means, for the introduction. Road to registration. This is mainly meant for candidates as well as professionals for the Engineering Council of South Africa. So basically, I'm just going to take you through how to navigate through the ECSA process until you become registered. And hopefully it is going to assist most of us who are in this particular hybrid. Just to outline the regulatory requirements, in terms of the Constitution of South Africa, Section 22, which obviously the Constitution of South Africa is a supreme law of of the country. So I'm just gonna quote what it says. Every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely. The practice of trade, occupation, or profession may be regulated by the law. So in South Africa, South Africa chose to regulate the engineering profession. This is where, or it gave rise to the Engineering Profession Act 2000. Normally, we refer it to EPA, Act number 46 of 2000. So the EPA provided for the establishment of the juristic person to be known as the Engineering Council of South Africa. Registration is an instrument by which ECSA regulates the profession. Over here, I'm just going to take you through the built environment landscape. So basically what you're looking at here is ECSA, it's in bold for obvious reasons. So what happens here is that ECSA reports to the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, as well as CBE on engineering profession. So that is what you're seeing on the screen is basically the built environmental landscape. So it also includes other council within this spectrum thereof. So I'm going to move to the next slide. This slide shows exactly how ECSA is actually important into this whole landscape. You can see that engineering council there, they are accounting authority. So this simply means that they give advice to the Ministry to the Minister of Department of Public Works as well as Infrastructure. They also give advice to the Council for Built Environment. And then obviously, just to top it up on that is the fact that ECSA has a CEO who is an accounting officer. So I'm just going to read through that ECSA is a statutory body established in terms of the EPA, which is Engineering Profession Act 2000, and derives its mandates and responsibilities from that particular act. So that means we are regulated. I'm just going to move to another slide. This slide shows how ECSA regulates engineering profession. And then just to take you through registration in the value chain. So there is research for development policy, standards, as well as procedures. So this simply means that within the ECSA space, there's research for development policies, which I myself have served under this particular one as well. And then there's also standards specifications as well in terms of registration. And then there are also procedures that must be followed for you to become registered, which are also served under there. So secondly, there's a qualification element. So within the ECSA, you need to have accreditations in terms of your qualification. So there's actually a department that is just responsible to check the accreditation or to check the qualifications. So they actually undertake education evaluation, registration, and as well as quality assurance. So that is in terms of the qualification management within the ECSA spheres. And then there's professional conduct management. Obviously, when you are registered, you need to comply within and act within the ECSA Code of Conduct. To top it up, or lastly, in terms of how the engineering profession is regulated, after you have registered, you need to accumulate professional development points, which in actual fact, every year you will need to accumulate 5 points once you are registered, so that you can so that come after 5 years you are able to actually submit back to ECSA so that they can renew your registration. And all this is mandated as the EPA for the as per the EPA 2000. Let me just pass. Yeah, what you see on the screen right now, it's categories of registration. And obviously, all of these are in accordance to the EPA 46 of 2000. In terms of the categories in which a person may register in the engineering profession, these are like the following professional categories. There's professional engineer, there's professional engineering technologist, there's professional certificated engineer, there's also professional engineering technician. And as I said, this particular road to registration covers the candidate as well. So there's also candidate for categories for candidates. So you can actually register as a candidate engineer, candidate engineering technologist, candidate certificated engineer, candidate engineering technician. There's also specified categories that are actually prescribed by the council. So most importantly, a person may not practice in any of the categories contemplated in subsection 1 unless he or she is registered in that particular category. So you may not practice as a professional engineering technologist if you are just a professional engineering technician. So subsection 1 of the Act actually also stipulates that you may not practice. That is in violation of ECSA Code of Conduct. What you see here, it's pretty much similar to the previous slide. These are registered persons category, professionals, candidates, as well as specified categories. So in terms of the specified categories within the ECSA spectrum or spheres, they've also included dam specialists, dolomite specialists, lifting inspectors, lifting machinery inspectors, registered medical equipment maintainers, fire protection systems practitioners, civil laboratory technical controllers, and the list goes on. In terms of the professional as well as candidate, I've already covered that in the previous slide. This is the slide where I get excited. A few reasons why you need to register. Once you are registered within the industry, there's peer recognition as well as your professional status, public confidence as well as recognition, you membership of certain VAs. VAs, it's voluntary associations. Basically, you are able to actually apply for associate membership within the civil engineering. There's SAIEE. You are able to actually become a corporate member of that particular VA, and then you are also recognized internationally through IEA accords, which I will touch on as I move forward. In terms of marketability to employees as well as for the public, just to ensure for assurance of public safety, once you are registered, you just become marketable. Because you do have a title right after your name. And then obviously there's exclusive use of reserved names. There's also statutory empowerments for the reservation of work of an engineering nature for exclusive performance by registered persons. So you are able to tap into a space by virtue that you are actually registered. And then there's identification of engineering work and its implication. I think currently ECSA is running a program through all the government spheres and departments to ensure that engineering work is only carried out by registered persons as well as supervised by registered persons. These are just common requirements for all the applicants. To attain registration in a candidate category, applicants must demonstrate that they meet the educational requirements for the category. Like I said, ECSA has a department specially that checks the educational, that deals with qualifications. So they will be responsible for that. The educational requirements may be met by the following: holding an ECSA accredited qualification or an acceptable combination of accredited qualifications prescribed for that particular category. So in the next slide, obviously you will be able to see what qualification you need to have in order for you to register on that particular category. Holding of a qualification or a combination of qualifications recognized under an international agreement. Here we actually looking at the educational accord under the auspices of the IEA, which is International Engineering Alliance. We'll get to know what International Engineering Alliance is as we move along with the presentation. So reference can be made here, colleagues. If you visit ECSA website and locate R01 policy document, R03 it's a process guideline. R04 it's a guide, it's a prescribed guide for you to follow when you want to become registered, and it shows you the standard competency as well as the E17 process. So you can actually go to ECSA website and download all these documents that are here, which is very much imperative if you want to become registered, so that you can understand what it entails in terms of all the categories and what is required of you as a person who wants to become registered. So these documents, I will flag them again as I continue, because they are quite important within the space, and if you want to become registered. This is just a continuation of the previous slide. Obviously, I'm not going to read word by word, but these are just common requirements as well. International engineering agreements. Basically here, what it says here is that ECSA is recognized by the International Engineering Alliance, or they are accredited through the Washington Accord, Sydney Accord, Dublin Accord. And when you talk about the Dublin Accord, you're only looking at the International Engineering Technicians Agreement. They do have the agreement with the Dublin Accord in that regard. For technologists, they have they are within Sydney Accord. For engineers, they are within Washington Accord. So once you are registered internationally, you are recognized in all these three accords that I've highlighted here. And obviously, you need to meet the educational requirements, and you need to be registered as a professional as well. So this does not apply to any candidate or candidacy registration. These slides here just explain recognition of engineering profession is dependent on their ability to apply the knowledge, skills, attitude in performing their engineering function within a category. So that is in relation to those accords that I've flagged in the previous slide. The competency is developed obviously through education, through training and experience. You know, that goes to all the categories that I've flagged also previously. It is on the premise that ECSA is part of the International Engineering Alliance Agreement and Accords structures. So the diagram that you're seeing over here depicts the concept of creating an environment for recognition and mobility of engineering graduates as well as professionals. I'm not going to go through you know, this diagram, but let me just read what it says here. Graduates from substantially equivalent programs A and B are able to proceed to further professional development towards substantially equivalent professional competency levels. So I think it's quite important that, you know, when you're working, when you have acquired enough experience and knowledge, you meet certain professional competency level. which obviously I will touch on as I proceed. So these are also other common requirements. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just gonna go to the next slide. This is in terms of the qualifications, colleagues. Qualifications that are recognized as benchmarks for registration in different candidacy categories within the ECSA space. So over here, we're just looking at the candidacy or the candidates. Applicants with non-accredited or foreign qualifications must apply for qualification or education evaluation with the ECSA Education Business Unit. This simply means that if you have a foreign qualification, you need to apply with ECSA Education Business Unit for validation in that regard. So applicants with foreign qualifications and years of working experience may apply for registration through individual assessment as well as alternative route. Alternative route here simply means if you don't meet any of these educational requirements here, you may actually apply to become a candidate within ECSA space in any of this category, but there are conditions related to that. So a candidate engineer is someone who holds a BSc or BSc in engineering or BEng. Candidate engineering technologist is someone who holds BTech, BEng Tech, an advanced diploma in engineering. And then ECSA has introduced the certificated engineer. So candidate certificated engineer is someone who has certificate of competency as the base qualification. In terms of the candidate engineering technician, you need to just have a national diploma. You will be able to apply and go through the process and become registered as a candidate. This is in terms of professional categories within the ECSA space if you want to become registered. So once again, these are category of registration. Obviously, we're looking at an engineer, engineering technologist, engineering technician. So in terms of the initial qualification or benchmark, if you do not have this qualification, it simply means that you do not qualify or you do not fall under that particular category. You will need BSc Eng or BEng, MEng to qualify as an engineer or for registration to become professional engineer thereof. So in terms of the level descriptor, you must actually provide a proof of being able to solve a complex engineering problems and performing complex engineering activities. We'll touch on this one when I get to that particular section, but it is quite important for all the engineers. You need to be able to demonstrate to ECSA that you can solve complex engineering problems and you can perform complex engineering activities. In terms of engineering technologist, obviously you will need your BTech or BEng in technology. With engineering technologist, you need to demonstrate to ECSA that you are able to solve broadly defined engineering problems and you are able to perform broadly defined engineering activities. And then in terms of engineering technician, like I said earlier, you need a national diploma and other related certificate as well. But in this case, you just need to solve a well-defined engineering problems and performing well-defined engineering activities. And if you will remember, I flagged certain reference or forms or rather documents that that can also assist you in knowing exactly what a complex engineering problem is, what a broadly defined engineering problem is, what a well-defined engineering problem is. In my previous slide, I think I said it's R04 that you can use. There's also R08 that you can download within ECSA Space that will actually guide you through how to actually perform in different levels within these categories. So just in yellow there, a master's degree as an academic qualification is not a requirement for registration as a candidate with ECSA, but it does provide you with direct access to register as a candidate. That is something just to note. This slide just shows how ECSA actually changed their system since 1971. For right now, we are actually post 1980. So over this slide, and as you can see up there, in order for you to meet educational requirements through an alternative route, it says here, if you have N4, you need to have worked at least 8 years for you to be able to register through an alternative route. So this simply means that you don't hold a diploma, you don't hold an engineering degree, you don't have a BTech as well. You can be able to be recognized through alternative routes. However, you need to have an experience of at least 8 years for you to be able to apply through ECSA systems, and then it's going to go through different systems, and then until you are considered registerable. So in terms of the last column that you're seeing over there, responsible experience. So ECSA recognize that when you're starting to work, you are at a level where someone is assisting you, you grow up until you reach the level of the degree level of responsibility E. So it simply means that you need to have worked at that particular level for at least a year where you were making or taking decisions on your own. And then the list goes on and on. So this is just through an alternative route, N5, N6, NTD, which is diploma. There's advanced certificate as well, and then the list goes down, and then the number of years also reduce accordingly. This is just solely for an engineering candidate as well as professional engineering technician, but through alternative route. And then this particular one, it's an alternative route for professional engineering technologists as well as candidates. There are a number of years, there are a number of responsible experience where you were performing at a certain level, of course, in that regard. So just for ECSA to make sure that when you enter or when you become registered, you are more than capable to actually take decisions on your own. And unfortunately for engineers, there's no alternative route. You need to have acquired BEng, BSc, Eng. So the slide that you are actually seeing here, this is according to me, ever since I've worked at ECSA, ever since I've been within the ECSA environment, this is the most important slide. So I'm just going to read out, Council must accredit programs. It may recognize programs, it may assess applicants. This is all in accordance to that particular act, which is EPA 2000. Then the council must register a person who demonstrates competency against standards. Against standards, basically, it means that ECSA has standard document that it has set up. ECSA had different outcomes that you need to actually demonstrate competency on your engineering report. So you need to have demonstrated competency for the council to actually finally register you. So I'm just gonna read out, like I said, R01, it's a policy, it's a registration policy. So this guideline, I mean, this gives you, or rather this guides, you know, how to navigate through you know, the ECSA process. And then this is a policy document that the ECSA uses in order for them to take through the process of registration. And then they are also prescribed competency standards, which are found on R02. PE, colleagues, it means professional engineers. PT, it means professional technologists. PN, they were avoiding the same acronym as PT, so this is professional technician. So if you want to understand what competency standards are, you need to familiarize yourself with R02, PE, PT, PN. And then R08, I did mention, it's a guide to competency standards. So it also defines what complex engineering problem is. It also defines what broadly defined engineering problem is. It also defines what a well defined engineering problem is, because you will definitely need to understand what those are if you want to become registered. I'm just not going to go through the whole list of documents here, because I've already flagged them on the other side. But when ECSA receives your application, R03 process, application and assessment process, that particular form or that particular document is used to actually assess the whole application as and when you submit. We recently updated the R04P. This is a training and mentoring guide. There's a lot of information in terms of how do you acquire training in order for you to become registrable. There's also information with regards to mentoring. If you do get a mentor, you will be able to understand what you need to do, what you need to give into the whole program, and how the mentor is actually going to support you in this particular regard. And then this is just training period post your qualification. So you will need minimum of 3 years post qualification training requirement. So ECSA is of the view that it generally takes longer than 3 years to acquire competencies. So, but as soon as you are 3 years post qualification, you may start thinking about, you know, applying through to become registered with ECSA. Imperative that training programs are well developed, managed and implemented by employers registered under CNUs. CNUs, it's commitment as well as undertaking by a training academy or registered private engineering firm or state-owned entity. So this simply means that your employer or your employer can actually create a training program for you in order for you to develop and go through all the steps in terms of the degree of responsibilities until you are at a point where you can demonstrate competency at a required level in that regard. So ECSA for right now, they are actually recognizing training academies. These are actually voluntary associations where you can actually get a structured training and mentoring programs so that they can take you through how to navigate, and you become registered. And obviously ECSA has this particular information within their website as well. Spending time on a particular element or training without a qualitative objective will not ensure achievement of the required level of competency for that particular level. So this is just in terms of training period, post-qualification. Again, it's continuing from the previous slide. The goal of training program is to allow candidates to develop their competence to the point of being able to demonstrate the outcome at the required level on a sustained basis, and also to take responsibility to perform for the work performed. And as you will know that once you become registered, that means you are actually accountable. So you take responsibility of the work that you are performing. Then there's also candidates' role in this regard. Basically, if you want to become registered, you should actually appreciate the honors. I mean, you should appreciate and ensure that the training, you receive the training that will actually culminate, the competency defined in the standards that ECSA set as per R02. There's also roles that must be played by supervisors. As and when you submit your ECSA application, you'll realize that ECSA requires 3 referees. So one of those referees is actually a supervisor, and this particular lines here just takes us through what the role of the supervisor is. It's a person who directs, controls the engineering work of the candidate, and who takes responsibility for the work in terms of Section 18(4) of the EPA 2000. This supervisor is expected, together with a mentor and candidate, to plan the training task by task, to develop candidates' competency, and to review the achievement of each task. But if I can tell you, the most important person in this regard is the candidate, just also to ensure that the supervisor's role is recognized, as well as the mentor, because these are people, or rather peers in the industry, who are already there. So they are committing to you as a candidate in order to ensure that your competency is achieved and you are also developed accordingly, because these are the people who are ECSA registered, they're on the system as well. So they actually can take you through and take you through how to get to the end point. So how do you develop professional competence? During the postgraduate period of training and experience, the applicant or candidate is in employment and works with and under supervision of a qualified engineering supervisors, as well as professional mentors. That is very important. A professional mentor guides the applicant or candidates' professional developments, obviously with the assistance of the engineering supervisor. So this simply means that you need to work closely with someone who is actually registered, and you are going to, when you submit your report, obviously they will be able to complete and submit forms on behalf of referees when you're applying for ECSA registration as well. So a training process may involve structured activities. It does include inductions, training courses on specific skills and technology. Yeah, it is quite important that you take up training process important, so that you can be able to understand what is required for you as a candidate. So you are actually a candidate or an engineering practitioner before you become actually registered. This here definition of competency outcomes. If you check within the ECSA website, you will get an application form where under engineering report, there are 11 outcomes that are defined and are also grouped. So the stem of each outcome is the same in the competency standards for engineering professionals, for engineering technologists, for engineering technicians. So the standard document for this one is it's R02. So there are 11 outcomes that you actually have to demonstrate that you are competent in if you want to become registered. The competency standards are differentiated by the insertion of level descriptors defined in the competency standard documents. At the location, I'm gonna flag this one. So this is the classification of competency outcomes for four professionals actually. Yeah, these are, and then all of these are all the categories that you're seeing over here. It's engineers, engineering technologists, as well as certificated engineers, that they fall under engineering technologists because the level descriptors, they are exactly the same. There's also engineering technician. There's specified categories. I did, just for example, like them specialist earlier on, I did sort of show which specified categories are those. So for engineers, in terms of the outcome, group A, whereby you are required to solve an engineering problem, you will need to define, investigate, and analyze a complex engineering problem. I want you to underline complex engineering problems. This is the person who holds BSc Eng, B Eng, M Eng. So you are required actually to solve or analyze the complex engineering problem. And then in terms of design or develop solution, it has to be at a complex level as well. And then in terms of, the comprehend and apply the knowledge of engineering principles, engineering knowledge, as well as the local knowledge, you will need to perform A1, A2, A3 at a level where it's complex. So you actually differ from the rest of the categories just because of the word complex. So if you are able to demonstrate to ECSA that you have defined, investigated, and analyzed an engineering problem which is a complex, you will be able to demonstrate competency on outcome number 1 within that engineering report that you would have completed. And then outcome number 2, which is A2 in this regard, take us through a design or develop a solution at a required level which is complex. So meaning you are going to take us through a design which was actually complex for you to demonstrate that you are competent in that particular outcome number 2. And then this is outcome number 3, which is comprehend and apply the knowledge. And I mean, from the from the professionals within the university sphere or BInch space, BSc space, this should be a walk in the park. Principles simply means that engineering, it tests your understanding in terms of the engineering principles there is. Equations, formulas, variables, solving a complex problem using softwares and technologies. So you will be able to demonstrate competency as an engineer in that regard. This is just group A outcome, where it says you have to solve an engineering problem. And then the list goes on. Like I said, the only difference is with engineering technologists, you have to have an engineering problem at a broadly defined level. This simply means that you have to think outside the box. You do not just receive information and say it's a word go and you implement. You need to ask yourself questions. You need to have ways in which you actually solve a problem in a very structured way. The same goes design or develop solution. You do not just go and design. You ask yourself a few questions before you can actually implement. You also have to undertake benchmarking with the choice of method that you are using in your design. So this simply means that you do not just take information and then just put it on the ground. You need to ask yourself difficult questions as to why. The same goes engineering principles as well. You need to have a good understanding, depth understanding of engineering science in this regard, in order for you to demonstrate competency on outcome number 3. So as an engineering technician, I wouldn't say it's easy, but well-defined engineering problems, well-defined design, or when you are developing a solution, well-defined engineering principles, although there's no such engineering principles are the same, but the complexity of the problem differs as opposed to engineering technologists as well as the engineers. So in this regard, you just need to perform your work at a well-defined level. Although because you need to take responsibility of your work, you still have to ask yourself, why am I using this method? What is the real problem, the engineering problem that I'm trying to solve here? And then lastly, specified categories: define, investigate, and analyze specifically defined engineering problem. So this is just for those specialized fields that are flagged on earlier on when I was talking about categories. So I've covered group outcome A, where we actually solving an engineering problem. Group B, managing engineering activities. We often refer to these as soft skills. Outcome number 4, according to the form for engineers, you are managing a complex engineering activities, underlying activities. In terms of technologists, you are managing them at a broadly defined level, and then at a well-defined level, specifically defined engineering activities. So if you can look into in the form, you will realize that it says what are ways in which you can manage yourself, resources, as well as people. So if you are actually versed with project management styles, project management tools, financial tools, you will be able to demonstrate competence in this outcome number 4, which falls under managing engineering activities outcomes. You will also need to understand what forms of contracts are there within the engineering fraternity. Where do we apply these kind of contracts? So basically, we regard this as a soft skill. In terms of how you communicate effectively, as a registered professionally, you should differ on how you actually communicate with the rest of the masses. You need to ask yourself questions. You need to ask yourself questions again so that you can be able to communicate effectively. Like, for instance, in this regard, often the question that comes when you are doing oral presentation is, how do you make sure that you actually accommodate all your audience? One can argue that we live in a very diverse country where there's hearing impaired. So you need to be able to, when you say that you have communicated clearly, when you enter that particular space where you have to go make a presentation, you need to be able to have all the tools that are required in order for you to actually accommodate all your audience. So it is very much important when you get to this particular outcome, which is under Group B, that you also consider, you know, social elements as well, and cover everybody within the group. There's Group C, which is impact of engineering activities. So over here, just underline social, cultural, environmental effects of complex engineering activities for engineers. You need to understand the impact of your project, actually, how it impacted the community socially, how it impacted the community culturally, how it impacted you know, the community in terms of environmental affairs within that particular complex. Obviously, as an engineer, you will be trying to work within a complex of, within complex of engineering activities. The same goes with technologists, technicians, specified categories, and so on. So you need to actually be able to deal with social matters. We need to deal with technical matters as well as environmental impacts when we are working within you know, different projects. And I like to believe that all the projects that we carry out as engineers, as technologists, as technicians, specified categories, they do have impact socially, they do have impact culturally, they do have impact environmentally as well. So in terms of the outcome 7, I'm referring to outcome 7 because on the engineering report, it simply says that it's an outcome 7. So over here, they wrote C7, which is outcome number 7 in the engineering report. It says meet all legal and regulatory requirements and protect the health and safety of persons in the course of complex engineering activities, just focusing on the engineers. But you will realize that this particular one also still applies across all the categories. What does this simply mean? This simply means that when you are working within engineering fraternity, we have laws that actually guides us. We have laws that protect us. So this is basically an outcome that you will need to speak in relation to all the acts that you have ever worked on, or all the acts that you actually understand as an engineering practitioner. For example, the easiest regulatory requirement or law is the supreme law of the country. You can simply say that you understand Section 22 of the Constitution of South Africa, for example. You can, you know, say there's an impact in terms of environmental impact. There's an act which is called NEMA, National Environmental Management Act. So when you are working within sensitive areas, you should be able to say that, oh, okay, I need to apply this particular act. When you're working in government, you will, you know, pick up Financial Management, Act in that regard. So basically, what are the legal and regulatory requirements that you understand in this regard for this particular outcome? And then there's Group D, which says that you have to act ethically, exercise sound judgment, and take responsibilities. For all these categories, it does apply. As an engineering practitioner, you need to go to ECSA website and familiarize yourself with ECSA Code of Conduct. And most of the information, according to my knowledge, you will read through Section 3 and of how actually you must actually conduct yourself as a professionally registered person or individual. So it is quite important that you must understand the do's and the don'ts within the engineering space. You do not want to find yourself acting unethically. So that is your outcome number 8 there. So you need to actually be conversant with the ECSA Code of Conduct in that regard. And then outcome number 9, D9, because we are on Group D, exercise sound judgment in the course of complex engineering activity. As a registered person or as a registered individual, you will need to know how to exercise sound judgment. You need to understand, or then there has to be a distinction between the person who's registered and who's actually not registered in terms of the sound judgment when you are confronted with an engineering problem out there. So this particular outcome, you need to actually come out and show that you are able to understand the risks that the sound judgment that you are making will have on a particular problem, if there is that particular problem, in that particular project. And then you also need here to make use of technologies that are available in order for you to exercise sound judgment. So you need to weigh your options when you are actually solving that particular complex engineering activity, solving that broadly defined engineering activity, as well as the well-defined, and the list goes on to specifically defined engineering activity. This is also the most important outcome that ECSA looks at in order for them to actually understand your competence in terms of you discharging that you are able to exercise sound judgment. There's D10, which is outcome number 10. We often ask questions like, are you a decision maker? As a decision maker, you should be able to justify the decision that you are making. And how do you do that? We have standard specifications in our disclosure. We have codes. We can use our academic knowledge in order for us to justify the decision that we took for that particular engineering activity. So for the engineers, obviously, it's complex engineering decision that they have to take. Broadly defined engineering level, well-defined engineering activities for technician, as well as the specified categories on a well-defined engineering activity. So you will see that I've sort of covered all the outcomes that are within that engineering report. Many a times, a lot of persons who are even registered, they actually overlook this particular one. This is where, if you don't pay attention, you will not be able to renew your membership within that required cycle. Engineers, this just says undertake initial development activities sufficient to maintain and extend his or her competence. It's exactly the same across the board for obvious reasons. We live in a very technology changing or fast changing world where there's always new technologies. So you need to sharpen your skill. You need to always attend new courses, attend seminars, and just so that you can keep yourself abreast to new knowledge, to new technologies, to anything that is actually aligned to the fourth industrial revolution within your working space. So this particular initial professional development, it is important. There's also a form within the engineering form where you have to detail all the courses that you've attended, all the CPD points that you have accumulated, and it is actually taken that serious in this regard. And then this degree of responsibility required for professionals. I think I did allude earlier on to say ECSA is of the opinion that as soon as you go out to work, you have to be exposed, assist, participate, contribute, and perform. So this is level A, this is level B, this is level C, this is level D, this is level E. Level E, it is the most important one. You will not be able to register if you do not demonstrate that you have worked on level E, especially on outcome number 1, 2, 3, number 9, and 10 as well, because they are aligned to this particular level E. So it just in terms of the nature of work, when you are being exposed, you have to go under induction. You're still observing processes. You also work with a competent practitioner. In terms of responsibility in that particular level A, you are not taking any responsibilities, just accept apologies that must actually be accept to pay attention. And then in terms of the level of support that you need, your mentor explains challenges and forms of solutions. So in this regard, you are observing, you don't have any responsibilities, but you have to pay attention. You are working closely with your mentor or supervisor in order for them to actually explain all the challenges that you have. When you are assisting, it's level B. This is where now you are starting to perform, which makes sense. ECSA says you start by being exposed, and then you now have to be hands-on and assist, perform specific process under close supervision. Your responsibilities are obviously limited, and then you are working closely with a supervisor or mentor, that also have to give you feedback. And then when you are done working at the level B, you now have to participate. Your level of responsibility will have to change. This is where you take full responsibility for the supervised work. So that means you are, even though your supervisor is there, they are now starting to say you have developed to a point where you can participate, and their support is then slightly being reduced, because you are now at a level where you are able to perform specific processes as directed by your supervisors. Contributing, this is where you take full responsibility to supervisor for quality of the work. Basically, over here, you are performing specific work with detailed approval of the work outputs. And then in terms of the level of support, applicants or candidates articulate own reasoning and compare it with those of the supervisor. So this simply means that you perform the work and you check yourself against the work that the supervisor has done. So in order for you to get to that particular level, or when you are picking a project, you know that this particular project I will be able to, I will be actually performing at level D. I will be contributing. For example, I'm an RE on site. You know, I have to supervise the quality of work. And then on level E, this is where you are performing. Level of responsibility to supervisor is appropriate to a registered person. This is where you become accountable for the work. You have no supervision. You recommend the work outputs. The level of responsibility to supervisor is appropriate to a registered person. You are responsible for your work, but you are not accountable simply because you are not registered yet, but you are able to make a decision in that regard. Yeah, because of the level of responsibility has actually alleviated. You are able, in terms of the level of support, applicant or candidate takes on problem solving without support, at most limited guidance. So you really on that particular level not expected to actually you know, be needing any support as far as that is concerned. So your guidance is quite limited in that regard. So level of development required of professionals. I'm not going to go through this, but I'm just going to go read through how you progress. So ECSA is of the opinion you have appreciation, you have the knowledge, you have the experience, and you now have the capabilities. So basically, these are just the level of development when you want to acquire that professional registration. So appreciation, knowledge, experience, and capabilities, it's quite important. So these are just...
Sorry to interrupt you. We just need to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. Let me just cut to chase. Yeah, I think I'm not going to go through this because I've already explained myself a lot on the other slides. It's R02, which is important for you to understand, you know, the complex engineering activities. The same goes with technologies, the same goes with technicians as well. So I'm not going to go through that, but colleagues may go through that R02 document that is actually reflected here. Yeah, I think I'll wrap it up with this particular slide. So this is the process flow diagram of registration process. You submit an application, it goes through the screening, you know, in line with the education. ECSA then set up experience appraisal for you. So there's 4 registered peers that actually goes through your application. And then there's 3 assessors, or there's 3, then they set up the EA moderation. So that simply means that as soon as you submit your application, it goes through the experience appraisal. They assess it, they send it through the moderator. The moderator then signs it off. If they reject it, it's with 2+ CNI. And then if they accept it, it's all the CIs. And then it goes through the sign off again. But the most important thing is for your application to get through to the professional review stage. So on this particular stage here of of EA, ECSA might require you to come through for interviews so that you can clarify certain outcomes that you were found incompetent in while the process is in the, your application is in the process. And then this here, it's professional review interview. So this is compulsory for everyone who wants to become registered. So you are expected to have a presentation and sit with 3 registered peers so that you can demonstrate to them that you are actually registered. And then after that process, your application goes through the moderation, and the council obviously will actually register you or decline you. At this point in time, they're able to refuse you, and then you can reapply again as soon as you can, unless if it's total refusal. If you are kept in abeyance, you can simply after 2 months still go back to ECSA and apply again. I'm not going to go through this. I've already covered it up. And then lastly, this is just a slide to show who are the registration officer, and then who's actually my boss. My boss is the manager who actually organized this particular webinar for me. So I think from my side, that will be all. And thank you so much. I won't be able to go through that. I think, yeah, I've done.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Ladies and gentlemen, for you, we will upload Kenneth's presentation on the SAIE website under past events and webinars, where you can actually download a PDF copy. I'm just going to take a few questions, and those questions we don't answer this afternoon, I will send to Kenneth and ask him to answer your question. First question here, Kenneth, to you is from Mr. Moritz de Vries, who's asking, if you graduated as an electromechanical engineer and throughout your work cycle before registration as a PRN, you only work on projects that mainly focus on the electrical side of your degree, how will this impact your registration process? Will you be limited by your registration in any matter or have difficulty registering?
Yeah, to answer that particular one, it's very easy. You will not be limited if you are BEng, if you are BTech, if you are engineering technician. You just need to demonstrate to ECSA what level of degree were you performing at, and then you can go through the process.
Thank you, Kenneth.
You will not be limited at all.
Great. I've got a question here from Joseph. He wants to know, if you are not registered as yet, do you need CPD points per year?
You do need to accumulate CPD. Within ECSA space, there's also a form that is called, I think it's B2. When you're applying, or when you're submitting your engineering report, you will need to populate that particular form. We need to understand whether you have been continuously, developing yourself. So not mandatory, but you will need to keep yourself upraised to the coming, technologies. So you are required to accumulate CPD points. It's very much important.
Thank you. Our next question is from Johan Lowe, asking, would it be possible to elaborate more on the statement, a master's degree is not a requirement, but provides you with direct access to register as a candidate?
Yeah, no, that is a very difficult one. I actually never really paid attention to that. But if you want to register as a candidate, as soon as you leave varsity, you can be able to go through ECSA website and download the form and register yourself, get registered as a candidate. So you necessarily don't really need any masters. But yeah, they're actually just saying that you will be able to still get accepted, because when you apply to be registered as a candidate, there's also a due process that must be followed. But you are able to just go through perhaps without having accumulated experience, just like others.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Another question here from Kamogelo Sekila. Can a certified engineer sign my documents before submission to ECSA if I want to register in the professional engineering category?
They can. Within the ECSA space, we recognize a supervisor, we recognize a mentor, we recognize a colleague, we recognize an employer. So they can actually sign off your engineering report as long as they are registered in that particular, for example, certificated engineering technologies, they will be able to sign off for professional technologist. And then for the specified, they obviously have to then, consider persons within that particular specialist field because it's specified.
Thank you. A next question we have from Vuyo and Cindy. What about academics who want to register under technician category, but who do not have industrial experience and no project to their name? What happens?
Yes, means I think as academics always think less of themselves, and I think that narrative needs to end. When you are an academic, you are actually at the forefront of providing guidance to us as registered persons. You understand engineering science. You understand, you are able to supervise the students. So that particular project that you are actually working on at an educational level or at an academic level, you are able to actually take that as a project and submit it to ECSA. They will actually recognize you, and then if they can go through mentoring and training and mentoring guide, which is R011, if I'm not mistaken, he will be able to actually understand that ECSA has actually included the academic, the people who are at academic space.
Excellent, thank you. A question here from Brent Gallant, who's asking, are 2 or 3 referee reports required? He recalls reading about 2, but hearing 3 now.
For professional engineers, you need 2. For engineering technologists, you will need 3, as well as technicians, as well as the specified categories. But for B-Eng, for BSc Eng, you will need just 2.
Great, thank you, Kenneth. Let me just get another question here for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time, but I'll just quickly, there's quite a few questions, and I think, Kenneth, you will be receiving quite a few questions emailed to you. We've got a question here from Nathiel Sabanda. Does a PhD or career in lecturing academia lead to direct registration as professional engineer?
It does not. They still need to go through the ECSA process. R01 is a policy document. R02 it's standards. R04 it's a guide on how to actually become competent. So the very same person with a PhD still has to go through the process to show how they actually solved the complex problem or engineering activity.
Okay, thank you. Our last question today, and the rest we will have Kenneth answer, is from Eliswa Skosana. She says, she asks your kind assistance with the situation that she's currently in. There's a big project that she's leading as a responsibility level E, but the company signed an NDA with the client. How does she go about in writing about this project in her TER? She says she's not even allowed to share any information about the project.
That's a very deep one. If
So
she's
what
not
I'll do,
allowed to share details on
yeah,
the project, that simply means that, you know, it's I don't know how it's copyrighted, but you know, if it's your experience and if you're able to speak to your supervisor, then you perhaps they can actually allow you to actually write on this particular project, because the level of responsibility is quite important. She's saying that she's at the responsibility level of E, so she
yeah.
should be able to converse with, you know, the team leaders in order for them to allow her to actually somehow write about this particular project.
As long as you don't mention names, I suppose.
Yes, as long as you don't mention names, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Kenneth, I think let's end the webinar here. There's a lot. I think we should redo this in a few months' time. There's a lot of questions that we couldn't answer. I'm sorry. And then the next time we run this webinar, we'll make sure it's 2 hours long to cover all the questions and then go through your detailed presentations. Kenneth, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance. It is highly appreciated. Please look at the handout section for the SAIE Training Academy brochure. That also tells you all about our CPD training courses and where you can earn CPD credits for your extra, to retain your extra registration. And for any other questions, as I said, it will be on the presentation slides that Kenneth we will upload onto our website, www.saiee.org.za. I thank you very much for your attendance and have a lovely afternoon further. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.